This episode is sponsored by the Cornell S.E. Johnson College of Business. The Cornell Executive MBA Americas program is designed for goal achievers from any industry. The program works by advancing your career without interruption, by providing global perspectives and intimate classroom settings, and by challenging, informing, connecting, and propelling you. Achieve your goals with the Cornell Executive MBA Americas program on the weekend and close to home. Search Cornell EMBA Americas in my city today.
Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Maricella Herrera and Megan Oliver.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast. I'm Maricella Herrera, the CEO of Ellevate Network, here with Megan Oliver.
Hi.
How's it going, Megan?
It's going well over here. We record these in advance, so the day we're recording this, it is the first day of Pride Month, so I'm very excited.
Woot.
I know you're not doing too well though. You're not feeling well
No,
today.
I feel like not great. Yeah, I'm recording this, but I don't feel my best. I don't know what's going on with me. Really, I really don't. Might be exhaustion. Usually happens around mobilized women time.
You're probably tired.
Yeah. There's a lot going on, but it is also Pride Month, so that's fun and cool. And yeah, I guess I don't know. I don't really have much to say today.
That's fine. If you're listening to this now, it's Mobilize Women has ended, but you can still see our sessions on the summit page. If you go to mobilizewomen.com/summit, I believe they should be on there, but if they're not, we're going to have them on ellevatenetwork.com on our videos. I'm going to be uploading them to YouTube. So you feel free to go back and watch them. I'm assuming, just based on how much I know about the speakers, that it was amazing. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. And the whole of Ellevate team is probably passed out right now.
Yeah, you definitely want to check it out. Go to ellevatenetwork.com. It's going to be great. It always is. And even and I would suggest even to look for some of the older Mobilized Women recordings, which are on our website as well, because there are so many topics that we've covered throughout the 7 years of Mobilized Women, and all of them are still relevant. So highly, highly recommend.
Yeah, and they're also all on YouTube too. I've got them in playlists in order that they happened and for each year.
So what's going on this week?
So what is going on this week? Because as we've talked about before, Mobilize Women is not the only thing we do. We do it once a year, but we do a whole lot more every week. So we've got some roundtables coming up. Our New York City chapter is hosting a Rising Leaders roundtable about overcoming imposter syndrome Wednesday, which is today. That is going to be in person. So always really fun to do an in-person roundtable style event. Our New York City chapter is amazing, so that'll be really cool. We're hosting our virtual roundtables. Our regular Ellevate roundtable is having a virtual networking elevated this Thursday, and our entrepreneurs are having their roundtable, also virtual networking elevated this Thursday. Probably, possibly to give us a little bit of a break after Mobilize Women's craziness.
Yep, but still lots going on. And that's not all. Yeah, I know I sound like a salesperson, but no, but really that's not all, because currently we have applications open for our Squads program. So Squads we run twice a year, and it is, I'd say, one of the things that really make Ellevate special. I mean, there's so many things, but Squads are really one of the programs. People who go through them, they really love them and come back and always give us great feedback from them. So what we do with Squads is you sign up, and we create a handpicked group of around 8 women who you meet with every week for a period of 12 weeks, all via Zoom. And you have 30 minutes to talk about things you are looking to achieve. So basically, we discuss some topics. that we all go through, but then everyone has a chance to have a hot seat. So basically, one day, one of those sessions is fully focused on you getting advice, getting different perspectives, being able to bounce your ideas off of other people who will tell you the truth and like it is. You build really strong relationships with the people in your squad. I mean, I have with the people in my squads, and I know you have too, Megan. And it's a
Mhm.
way to really keep yourself accountable, find some grounding. Like, life is so uncertain right now, and we've been hearing about layoffs, but it's not just layoffs. It's a lot of just the world. Like, some people are being laid off, other people are deciding to leave because it's time to chase something new. Some people are deciding to stay but are not necessarily happy. Whatever it is, there is an uncertainty in this world, and a squad can help you get grounded. So I highly recommend signing up for one. It's part of Elevate membership, and you can find more information at elevatenetwork.com.
Absolutely. And like she said, I've had a great experience with my squads. She's had a great experience with her squads. They're so good. They're just they I was talking about them earlier today with somebody, and I was saying that like they don't
Hmm.
just say what you want to hear. They actually ask the questions and like get to the real of the situation. I my first squad, I was really struggling with imposter syndrome. They helped me through that. My second squad, I wanted to ask for a raise, but I had never negotiated a
Hmm.
raise before, and I got the raise thanks to them. So I used an Elevate program to get a raise at Elevate, which was very funny.
As it should be.
But uh, but yeah, yeah, exactly. But it was they were fabulous, and it's just such a good circle of support, but also people that have different experiences than you and can like offer you that insight.
Yep, definitely. So if you're looking for that, look for you can just come to Elevate and you'll get your squad. Promise.
Yeah, we'll make your squad for you. Couple things before we go into the interview. Let's go over a few more events that we have coming up. We have community circles, several coming up. Our today is our professionals in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That's on Wednesday today. Our Asian and Pacific Islanders community circle is on Thursday, and our Hispanic, Latina, and community circle is next Tuesday. We also have some in person events in addition to the New York City Rising Leader Roundtable on today, that is in person. We also have our Atlanta chapter is hosting a breakfast club all about negotiations today. Our Dubai chapter today is hosting a Rise and Shine special event about public speaking and finding your voice with David Pope. Our Los Angeles chapter tomorrow, Thursday, is having a happy hour in Santa Monica. Our Island chapter next Tuesday is having a happy hour at Revel. And our New York City chapter, again, they're very busy right now, is having their Summer in the City series, Aligning Industries Happy Hour, Tech and Social Impact, also next Tuesday.
Lots of things going on, both virtually and in person. So take your pick.
Yeah, take your pick, have fun, just and if you're an Elevate member and you happen to be in any of these areas, even if you're not a member of their chapter, you can go to their events. Like there's not any restrictions based on what chapter you're in.
Absolutely. Megan, do you want to tell us about the interview that's coming up?
I do. I teased it last week at the end of the episode, as we often do. So everybody give me grace here. Our interview, I want to point out, is amazing. Her name's Sheena Yap Chan. She's so cool. She's a keynote speaker, consultant, podcaster, and best-selling author on building self-confidence. I've talked a lot about self-confidence on this podcast, so we all know that that's a particular passion of mine. She's the host of the podcast, The Tao of Self Confidence, and the brand new book of the same name. And she's also the author of Asian Women Who Boss Up. We talk about so much, and it's just such a good conversation. But I say give me grace because this was the first interview I ever did for the Ellevate podcast. I know we had Rumaitha's a few weeks ago, but that just the way that the schedule released, hers got released a little earlier. This was chronologically the first one I ever recorded. So everybody give me grace if I stumble a little. But yeah, she's so cool.
And I'm sure you did a fantastic job. I really can't wait to hear it because I do think you are selling yourself short. So
Hopefully. Uh, but yeah, she was so sweet about it too. She actually at uh the end of, I don't know if she would want me to say this, but she, after we finished the interview and whatever, I was like, thank you so much, you know, it's my first interview, and she was like, well, I'm glad to have helped popped your cherry.
Yeah,
So she was super super sweet. Let's go ahead and get to that interview now, because yeah, she was great.
great.
Today I am so excited to be interviewing Sheena Yap Chan. Sheena, hi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Megan. First off, thank you so much for having me and for, being a guest on the show. It's such an honor.
Yeah. Oh, it is our pleasure. I was so excited when we were working together to book. The listeners know that I'm the one that helps book a lot of the guests, and I was really excited to get to talk to you.
Nice.
Yes. So we usually at the beginning of the episode ask kind of the big question, which is, how did you get to where you are today in your career?
Oh, wow. How far should I go back?
You feel free to go back as far as you want. If you want to go way, way back, you can. But if you want to go, you know, what kind of spurred on where you are right now, that's also totally fine.
Yeah, no, no, it's a great question. Thanks so much. And really, all this really started from my upbringing, being in Toronto, growing up here in the 90s, even though it's one of the most multicultural cities in the world, I never really saw anybody that looked like me in any form of media. So I was always ashamed of being Asian. I wanted to have blonde hair, blue eyes. I even wanted to change my name to Heather to sound more Western. And just my whole childhood, I just felt really ashamed. And it wasn't until my 20s where I dyed my hair back from blonde back to my original hair color where I really accepted being Asian. And then in 2015, I was trying to find support systems that really cater to Asian women's confidence, and I couldn't find any. And so I realized, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast, right? I didn't even know what a podcast was back then. And then even in 2015, there was hardly any Asian people podcasting. So I thought, either this is going to be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Sometimes when you're the first one, it's not always easy. I'm not saying I was the first one, but I was maybe the first few. And so I started my podcast as a way to represent, stronger Asian women and also have as a support system. Just because in our upbringing, we're never told to share about how we're feeling, what we're going through, and that's why we have so many confidence issues. And so, this podcast started, the Tao of Self Confidence. Since then, I've been able to interview over 700 Asian women on this topic, and always trying to find different ways to create better representation. So, in February of 2021, we have a book called Asian Women Who Boss Up, which highlights the stories of 18 Asian women who are able to forge their own path, overcome obstacles, and thrive. Which is part of a book series called Women Who Boss Up that started out of the pandemic. And later this year, in May of this year, I'll be launching my own book under the same name as the podcast. So I'm so excited to have that out, especially in the month of May, since it's Asian Heritage Month. It's really talking about, learning to heal through our traumas, right? Because we all go through some form of trauma. And in Asian culture, we're never told to talk about the traumas we go through. But we really have to learn to figure out what's stopping us from our greatness so we can show up as our best self. There's just so many different things that our community goes through that's never talked about. And because of that, a lot of people may think that we're okay, but really we're not okay, right? Especially after the pandemic with the rise of Stop Asian Hate. We had to go out there. I had to go out there and do something, create a voice, be able to speak up, especially since in the beginning it wasn't really covered by media. So for me, it's really about creating better visibility for Asian women, being able to speak up. It's not always easy, of course, but I know it's going to go somewhere. And especially after seeing the amazing wins we had from the Oscars, I know what's possible for us. So being able to see that, and that's why representation is so important.
That's true. I know this will come out a little bit later, but we are coming right off of Michelle Yeoh's win at the Oscars, and just everything everywhere all at once in general, absolutely killing it.
Yeah, I mean, every time I watch their speeches, I just want to cry. Like, I just want to cry because finally, right, we're getting recognized. Finally, we're not seen as just a sidekick or the stereotypes Asian Americans are put in Hollywood, right? especially Michelle Yeoh's role, she's just a regular, ordinary immigrant Asian woman, right? She'd be your Asian auntie who would just go to the grocery store and doesn't really pay attention to anything. She minds her own business. But here's, an ordinary immigrant Asian woman who's the lead role of the movie and also the heroine, right? So this ordinary person has become an extraordinary person. And, that's something amazing to see because for so long we've just been in the background, we've been invisible, but Michelle Yeoh has been able to create this amazing character and bring so much representation out of it. So I just love Everything Everywhere All at Once. I remember watching it for the first time in the theaters and I was just blown away by it. I know everyone either really likes it or really hates it, but with science fiction, right, it's always like this, there's no in between.
I know it's so divisive, which is so sad. But I know I'm gonna be honest, I have not seen it yet, but it is literally the top of my movie list right now. But I can tell you, my roommate saw it, and the day after she saw it, she came home and she was like, "I wish it was already on demand because I want to watch it again already."
Yeah, yeah, same here. Like, I'm just glad now it's on Amazon, so we can watch it now at
Yes.
anytime, which is really great. I'm excited for all the future movies that's being made. Especially A24 has been cranking out a lot of amazing content now, and also hiring a lot of Asian actors. So I'm really excited about that. And just realizing we can be bankable. We're not just people in the background. We're not invisible because for so long Asians weren't casted in Hollywood movies because they thought we couldn't make money for them, right? And so for so long, the Asian characters were always whitewashed, right? Which is really inappropriate when you think about it, right? But back then,
Yeah,
we didn't know any better. But now when you look back, it's like, that was pretty racist.
I know. It is I'm gonna say pretty horrifying, but that's kind of an understatement. Pretty horrifying to look back on some of the some of what Hollywood thought was Asian representation in even past the golden age of Hollywood, even up to pretty recently.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I know 2023 has been great so far, but we still have a long way to go, of course. But at least, it's a starting point. It's opening the doors, it's showing us what's possible. And yeah, I'm just excited about it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I do want to mention we mentioned Michelle Yeoh, but the one that I really had me Kiwi's
Kiwi Kwan?
speech.
Yeah, Kiwi
Yeah,
Kwan.
Kiwi Kwan's speech had me bawling. Like it was so beautiful. And I mean, of course, I grew up with Indiana Jones. I didn't really learn the very harsh, harmful stereotypes that a lot of Indiana Jones movies reinforce until I was much older. But of course, I grew up knowing him from Indiana Jones. And to see him, he's talked so much about the struggles of trying to break free of those stereotypes and being pigeonholed. And to see him, celebrated on Hollywood's biggest stage was just really beautiful.
Oh my God, every time I watch his interviews, I just want to cry. I'm so happy that he has one of the most amazing comeback stories in America. Being a big child star in two big movies and, couldn't get any roles for 20 years. Um, then decided to reignite that acting career, got a role in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Then the pandemic hit, and then for 12 months he couldn't get anything, lost his health insurance. Um, then this movie played, and everything just was, turning around for him. And I'm sure that's not easy, right? To be waiting and not knowing what's going to happen, especially you're locked down at home. You don't really know what's going on. And it takes a lot of patience, right? I mean, we live in a world where instant gratification is our measure to success. And so people see him, they think, oh, this happened overnight. It's not overnight. I always believe there's no such thing as overnight success. And I wish people just shared about their struggles, what they went through, because we all struggle. I struggle too, for so long, and my biggest enemy was myself because I was always thinking I was never good enough. And so yeah, just seeing him is just, it's just knowing, and it's just a great reminder that, everything will come into place. Just keep moving forward, just keep putting in the work because, now he won his first Oscar, and he also made history. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that he actually mentioned that I want to bring up in his speech was about how important his wife's support was to him, and building that support in thinking, I will never make this happen. And so I was wondering, how you can recommend to, you say, a lot of Asian women struggle with representation in media, representation, seeing representation in the workplace. Where do you find that a lot of women can go and find and build that support?
I mean, I think as a like in our community, we should be okay to ask for help, right? Because for so long we've been told that it's seen as a weakness or a handout, but in all honesty, that really stops us. So being able to ask for help, finding groups where you can, there's a safe space for you to talk about it, even if it means, seeking a mental health professional, it should be okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Especially after the pandemic, we all have gone through some form of mental health challenge. So we should be normalizing it more than keeping it as a taboo. And this is why I constantly create, the podcasts, the books, because this could be one way of support when they can read someone's story or hear someone's story and realize, oh my God, I'm not the only one who went through with this. She went through it and she's been able to come out of it. Right? These stories matter. This is why representation is so important because without it, we're not going to think anything's possible. So yeah, there's a lot of support now more than ever, and just being able to join a Facebook group or have a coach or connect with a mental health professional or listen to a podcast or read a book, right? There's so much support out there. It all depends on what support looks like for you.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up mental health professionals, because I think that sometimes a resource that gets overlooked in terms of finding support. I think you oftentimes, people want to talk about friends, family, which are so integral, but sometimes seeking that mental health, there is nothing wrong with it. I'm a huge proponent of therapy, um and so I'm really glad that you brought up that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, mental health is so important, and our culture has always made it hush hush. We don't talk about it. Most of the time, they want to ignore it, thinking it's going to go away. Or sometimes they just do something really drastic, like putting that person in a mental institution when really all they need is just some maintenance, right? All of us need some form of mental health maintenance. And if it means talking to a mental health therapist, then do it, right? I mean, I'm not an expert in the mental health space. I'm not a mental health therapist. I'm an advocate for it. I think we definitely need to learn to share what we're going through, have an outlet where we can let out all our feelings so that new energy comes in, positivity comes in. Because if we suppress all that, we're going to feel like we're trapped within ourselves, right? I also talk about mental health in my upcoming book and why that's so important and why that stops us too from moving forward because there's just so many things that's bottled up. How can you go out there and be your best self when there's still so much things that's keeping us, right, mentally? So it's really, really important to work on your mindset, your mental health. And it's not just Asian Americans who feel it, we all feel it, right? We all go through some form of mental health challenge, myself included. And so I think it's okay to say that, right? We should be okay to say that. Like, it's okay not to be okay because that's life. We're human. Not every day is always going to be pretty and rosy and, you know, singing love, singing kumbaya. There's days where you just feel like even getting up is such a big battle, right? And for some people it is, right? Because we don't know what they're going through. We don't know the situation that makes them think even just waking up is a sign like they could make it. So yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to make sure we name drop your book, because we talked about Asian women who bossed up, but it's the Tao of Self Confidence.
Yes, it's under the same title as my podcast, The Tao of Self Confidence. Oh my gosh, there's always a tagline: a guide from moving beyond trauma and awakening the leader within. So it's really like it's not just a how-to manual about being a leader because I realize there's a lot of how-to manuals out there, but really we have to start digging deep first before we can come out as our best self because it's like, if I want to ride a bike and I think that I'll never be good no matter how many times I practice, how are you gonna be the best, how are you gonna move forward and learn how to bike if mentally you're not there? And so this is why talking about the issues our community goes through, especially Asian women. We go through so many different things that nobody talks about. We're constantly seen by our negative stereotypes. We're always over sexualized. Even in Asian hate crimes, we're targeted more. And even if we become the target of an Asian hate crime, for some reason we end up being the blame, even though we didn't do anything. We have the model minority myth, thinking that all Asians are successful. And then just trauma, right? All kinds of trauma, racial trauma, money trauma, intergenerational trauma. There's just so many things that we go through that nobody ever talks about. And sometimes we're not even aware that this could be something that's stopping us. So, being able to talk about these things, being able to open up about the hard things, the things that our Asian parents tell us not to talk about, it starts with that. And then figuring out how we can heal from it and really kind of just go through this process to kind of show up, right? And it's important. It's really important. We got to work on ourselves. We got to figure out the things that's stopping us, and maybe we can find ways to even ask, our parents or grandparents, because they came to America and Canada with, some of them with just a dream and like $20 in their pocket, right? We didn't know what they had to go through. Some came through a boat. Some had to literally run for their life to have a better future, not for themselves, but for their kids as well. So just a lot of unpacking, even talking about the history, which is so important because there's certain things that in history too that stops us, right? I mean, in Asian culture, the men are always favored over the women. So, I mean, if we're always seen as second class, guess what? We're not going to go out there and get a promotion or be in corporate roles or be a leader. Um, when it comes to corporate roles, Asian women are one of the lowest. In 2021, they said only 2.7% represent Asian women in corporate leadership roles, which is crazy.
Ugh.
And the number keeps declining. So, this book is hopefully a beginning of something that can open the doors and help women, not only Asian women, but beyond, see their potential. So, even though it may seem like it's catered to a specific audience, I mean, this is something that any person can learn because we all go through similar things. We all have similar issues we go through. And we need to share our specific stories because it can give a different perspective. We can find ways to solve problems differently. And it's important to have that. It's really important to share our specific stories because there's too many times where I've been rejected, being told that I just catered to a specific audience, and I never really understood that. I'm just talking about what I go through and what my culture goes through, and hopefully that goes beyond than just my culture.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to say that I think part of the reason that I was so excited to talk about representation in Hollywood is I can tell you, the people on the podcast know this, but I am a white woman, so I don't it, I luckily I have seen myself represented as a white woman, pretty much all my life. However, I am also a person who is on the autism spectrum, and I hate Hollywood's version of people on the autism spectrum. I have yet to ever see, I feel like, an accurate thing. So, what you're saying about this intersectionality of, these are experiences that people across race, across experience, feel, is something that really hit home to me. So I loved what you said about, tearing up when you saw representation, real representation in the media.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, it was just so amazing to see. It's kind of like when I saw Crazy Rich Asians for the first time. I just felt all kinds of emotions, like good emotions, of course, just like finally, something in the movies that I can like be proud of, and not it's not just about, the token geisha or the token sidekick. This is we're the main characters, and it's just like the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah. Um, I'm I'm just so glad that we got a chance to talk about that. I was just, yeah. I do want to move though. You've talked several times about the pandemic, and I think hopefully we all saw, the outpouring of support for the Asian community as it received such unwarranted hatred and backlash for a pandemic that, from the very top of American leadership all the way at the top of government, was pinned on them. And I was just wondering how you navigated being an Asian woman with a platform, having a podcast during that time, when so many Asian individuals were under attack and still even are.
Yeah, I mean, I do my best to be vocal, about what's going on because for so long, mainstream media wasn't even really covering it. And it wasn't really until the Atlanta shootings where everyone kind of woke up. And even then, that still took a while, right? Like it took a while for the names to come out. They said the shooter had a bad day. Like nothing right was going on. Even when they said they had an expert panel on Stop Asian Hate, it was like four Caucasian people and one African American person, and I was like, how is that? How are they experts? Like, shouldn't you have
Yeah.
Asian people on it? Especially there's over 24 million Asian Americans, right, in the U.S. Um,
And they were often men
yeah,
talking about a hate crime that would explicitly target Asian women.
yeah, because people don't realize Asian women are targeted 2.5 times more than men, and it's crazy because like we have our elders getting attacked. We have these women who are who aren't even doing anything. They're just walking to the store or walking to the car or taking the subway, and out of nowhere someone attacks them because of the pandemic, because we became the scapegoat. And then even just even last year, like I saw an article on the day Roe versus Wade was overturned. A sponsored article talking about Asian mail order brides, and it was literally a manual of how to get one and why you want one, and like, here are the top 5 countries that you should get it from, and it was just appalling because this mainstream media platform says they're progressive, and then you have sponsored content like this. Just it was just disgusting. Uh, you know?
I cannot fathom like which and I guess that's my blind spot. I and everybody's it's so important to talk about our blind spots, and that's why it's important to get other people's input and information, because so much of this seemed new to me. But it was only new to me because I hadn't experienced it, and because, as you said, a lot of the media wasn't covering it. It's so many people were on the ground experiencing it every single day. And that's why it's so important, I think, to have representation, not just in Hollywood, as we were talking about earlier, but in the news. People who were talking about things that are affecting their communities. And one of the things that I think about is I always felt very safe riding the subway. You know, I never really thought about it. But then I was talking to a coworker of Asian descent, and she was talking about it. She said, "No, I feel nervous every single time I'm riding the subway." And I thought to myself, "Oh, right, because she sees this happening to her community, and this is not something that I ever felt in danger of." And I just all of this goes back to talk to people, get their input, make sure that you are thinking from all sides.
Yeah, for sure. And like this is why it's important to talk about these issues, right? To talk about these
Yes.
things that's rarely talked about. I mean, New York is a hotbed for Asian hate crimes right now. I've spoken to a
Yes.
lot of women, like you mentioned, the subway. They get paranoid. Some women go through PTSD after attack, right? Nobody ever asks how the victim's doing, and the perpetrators. It's always like there's a mental health issue. That's why they did that. Is it really a mental health issue? Is it really a mental health issue when one guy decides to attack 8 Asian women and travel 2 hours at a time just to attack an Asian person? Or is it really, what is it? Like, is that not considered a hate crime? So there's just so many things, and it's just frustrating when you see this, hear this, and then nothing gets really done, right? And then, when our elderly are attacked, I'm like, it's anyone who attacks an elderly is a coward, first of all. Um,
Yes.
it's just that could be my grandma, that could be my grandfather, that could be my friend's aunt or friend's mom, thinking like, they come here to have a better life, and yet now they're getting traumatized all over again, and it's so unfair. And nobody ever asks how we're doing. right? Always about the perpetrator, always about, you know, what their whole life story as to why they are the way they are. But nobody ever says, well, how do you think the victim is feeling? What is she going through, right? Does she cry at night? Does like a pin drop trigger her, right? Because nobody ever thinks about what the victim is going through, and nobody talks about that. And I think it's important to talk about that so they can understand like what you're doing is not something that's temporary. It's actually a lifelong thing that these people will suffer from. And if they don't get the proper help, it could damage them. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think you bring up a good point too of talking about the perpetrator. That's long been a critique of the media is so much attention goes to the perpetrator and his state of mind. And I don't want to stereotype, but it's usually a him on the perpetrator's state of mind on, what could have possibly brought him to this level, and so much sympathy for them. And you might get the victims' names once or twice, but you never see their trauma, the survivor's trauma, what the families are going through, everything that they, it's hard to follow up on what's going on with the victims. How are they doing later on? Because that doesn't get reported on.
yeah, I've yet to see someone talk about the victims, you know, what they're going through.
Yeah. Especially not in a follow-up scenario.
Yeah,
So, moving on, let's move on to a little bit, you know, nicer things. Your book is coming out.
yeah.
What is like the main thing that you hope people take from your book?
Honestly, I just want them to be able to. I just want it to help them heal through whatever it is they're going through. If not heal, at least be aware that there could be something, right? And they're able to take the necessary steps to become better. Not just become better, but be their best selves. Because in order to be a leader, it's not easy, right? Like there's so many things you have to do, and being a leader is not telling people what to do. It's just like sometimes you're the first one to do this, and you don't even know what's going to happen, and it takes a lot of confidence and courage to do it. Um, and sometimes there's days where you're like, do I really want to do this? It's
Yeah.
nerve wracking. It's, you know, anxiety, stressful. And so having this is just like another type of support system. They can read through it, so they can relate, they can understand, like, oh, you know, I didn't realize this was happening. I didn't realize I could be carrying the trauma of not only myself, but my ancestors. I didn't realize
Yeah.
this is why we do certain traditions. You know, I didn't know this could be a trauma that I was going through. So just being able to bring awareness to it, find the resources to help them move past that. I mean, it's not going to happen in a day, of course, but at least if they have these little things that's coming up in their lives, they can find ways to heal from it. They can find ways to seek support or even talk to their friends and family or talk to a mental health professional. Um, and you know one day be able to not let their trauma control them, right? There's a lot of people out there, their trauma is constantly controlling them, not realizing they can work through it and be the opposite, right? Be able to take control of their own lives, because we can't change the past, it's already happened, but how can we move forward and, you know, help help ourselves, help others, and become the best person we can be. So it's not easy, it's going to be ugly. There's days where you don't even know what's gonna happen, but when you look back, you'll understand why you had to go through what you went through.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really glad you raise generational trauma, because I feel like that's something that's only been talked about outside of, the very internal mental health community. I feel like that's something that's only really gotten a lot of attention very recently, and I think it's something really important to consider.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something important because they say it could go as deep as 4 generations. I think in our culture it's longer, so, but that's my opinion. That's not like a stated fact, that's literally my opinion.
Look, your lived experience is just as valid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing so far. We are going to wrap it up with our lightning round questions, if that's all right by you.
Yes, of course.
All right, perfect. So it's just a few you can answer in one or two sentences, whatever you're feeling. But we'll just go through a few of them. If you could time travel, where is the first place you would go?
Oh my gosh. I think being in Hawaii, because I used to live in Hawaii too, winters, it, and it was just fun. I just love being in Hawaii. So,
Fair. It's so beautiful.
yeah.
Would you rather explore outer space or the bottom of the ocean?
Oh, that's a hard one because I kind of want to do both. Do I really have to choose one?
Same.
Can I just do both? Why settle for one when you
Sure.
can do all?
Yeah. We can do everything. If you have self-confidence, right?
Yeah, I would like to do
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Yeah. I was so torn. We Maricella and I asked each other these questions on the podcast one time, and I was so torn.
Yeah.
What is the most used app on your phone?
Oh my gosh, probably LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah. Oh, big one on mine too. What is a skill you wish you had?
To dance? I can't dance.
So valid. I think everyone can dance. It's just I think well, I don't not to bring it back to confidence, but I think a lot of it comes back to confidence.
Yeah.
What sport would you compete in if you were in the Olympics?
Um, wow. I guess running?
Running, fair enough. Would you want to do long distance running or like short
Short,
sprints?
short.
Short, fair. Least amount of effort and go for the gold. I love that. What oh, my personal this is one I put in here because I wanted to make sure it was asked. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
I eat it.
So do I. I love pineapple on pizza. I have a very strict rule with that, which is yes.
Yeah,
And so I always like listen to what our podcast guests say, and I'm like, are they gonna agree with
yeah.
me? Yeah. And finally, what is one thought that you want to leave with our listeners?
One thought is I just want especially women, I just want to remind you how amazing you are. I know we tend to overthink, we tend to over prepare, and something still holds us back, and it's really just ourselves, how we perceive ourselves. So I just want you to realize how amazing you are and just look back at the things you've accomplished and use that use the things that you've accomplished before and transfer it into your current and future things that you're going to do.
I love that. I love that. And thank you so much for joining me. Before we go, let everybody know where can they find you, where can they find your books before so because I'm sure they're all going to want to check you out.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for asking that. So you can check out my website, sheenayapchan.com or the Tao of Self Confidence.com. You can already pre-order the upcoming book, The Tao of Self Confidence, on Amazon. And then Asian Women Who Boss Up, you can buy it on my website.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well done, Megan.
Thank you. I was so nervous.
No, that was great.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you to Sheena again for A, being amazing and all of the amazing work that she does.
Yeah,
But
she's
B,
really
yes,
cool.
she is. Yeah, she's one of the ones that we're reaching into now a period where several in a row we reached out to them. Because sometimes we have people who will reach out to us, they'll be like, I'd like to be in your podcast, and we're like, you seem really cool. Come on. But there's several people in a row starting soon where like we reached out to them because they were really cool. And she was one of those that I found, and I was like, do you want to be on the podcast? Because just you're so everything you do is amazing.
Yeah, she's really, really cool. So I'm very happy that you got to do that interview. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I made history with that being my first interview I ever did. Let's talk about some people who also made history this week.
great segue.
Let me go ahead and start out with somebody who, may have been mentioned on this podcast as a history maker once or twice before. Kamala Harris became the first woman to deliver a commencement address at West Point.
That's very cool, but also I feel like that should have happened a long time ago. But okay, fine. Dr. Deborah Shropshire became the first woman to lead Oklahoma's Department of Human Services. Also should have happened.
I agree.
Anyway,
Heather Boyd became the first woman and first Anishinaabe to be superintendent of Grand Portage National Monument.
Ashley Woods became the first Black woman editor in chief of the Crimson White. the University of Alabama's newspaper.
Tanya Bradshaw was nominated to become the first full-time woman deputy secretary for the Department of Veteran Affairs.
Joania Wapichana became the first indigenous woman president of Brazil's Indigenous Protection Agency, FUNAI. We went international today.
We did, yeah. I always try to go a little bit international, at least. Most of them were pretty local, and of course, all of these are history makers. I already have the asks out to several of them to be like, do you want to be on my history maker segment? So if you're any of these people, keep an eye out on your inboxes.
Well, next week, I am very excited for you all to meet the person I interviewed, Elisa Licht. She is a former communications executive. She has such an interesting story because she was the person behind, I would say, the first like influencer social media account, which was actually tied to a brand. It was DKNY PR Girl, and she really taught herself how to tell a brand story authentically and build a fan base around the person behind the brand. She then pivoted from her corporate work and became an author, a podcast host. I was on her podcast, which was so much fun. And she's really, really great. She just came out with her book on brand, Shape Your Narrative, Share Your Vision, Shift Their Perception. And she sent me a copy, and I will let you know it is really, really great. So if you are thinking about, kind of your personal brand and what that is, and if it's linked to your job, if it's not, just take a listen to this episode. I ask lots of those questions, and we have a really fun time.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to it.
Great. See you then.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye. Ellevate Network drives real results for ambitious women trying to break through the glass ceiling and achieve success in their careers. We offer a platform full of resources and opportunities for growth, all designed to help you unlock your potential. With Ellevate support, you can take the first step toward achieving your professional goals. With a supportive community and tangible resources at your fingertips, you're only one step away from reaching your fullest potential. Join us today and take advantage of our 30-day free trial to start building the career of your dreams. Thanks so much for listening to the Ellevate podcast. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, give us 5 stars, and share your review. You can learn all about Ellevate membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. Thanks so much, and join us next week.